Welcome to Latinas from the block to the boardroom, where wisdom comes from everywhere. This is a podcast about generational wisdom shared to help build a bridge for future generations and to build stronger communities through education, technology, and health. Welcome to Latinas from the block to the boardroom. This podcast was sponsored by 5E Leadership and Marketing. You can reach out to us at latinasb2b.marketing, where we provide services under podcasting production and business strategy consulting services. Hola, hola. Today we are joined by the creative and innovative founder of Nopalera, Sandra Liliana Velazquez. Sandra takes us on a journey through a powerful narrative of embracing Chicana identity, to her band Pistolera, to crafting beauty products with the Nopal, the Mexican cactus that encapsulates our Mexican heritage. The Nopal cactus isn't just a plant, it's a testament to the untapped potential within Latino communities, as we know how to utilize the entire Nopal, from the pads, which have medicinal purposes when being cooked, to the yummy tunas, the reddish purple fruit that grows from the cactus pads that you can eat. But Sandra's mission for Nopalera is clear: to be bold and worthy of luxury. In this episode, we discuss how we can elevate Latino goods in the marketplace, much like the esteemed European luxury brands, and to ensure these products evoke the respect and value they deserve from the brown and Black consumers. It's about self-worth, as we clearly saw in her famous Shark Tank episode, and the startup journey, where the challenges of learning the operational ropes with technology and trademarks, to demonstrating her resilience in this journey to here we are today. Overall, we present a passionate appeal to all listeners to support Nopalera's mission by showing our power of customer advocacy in shaping the brand's success. We need to ask for those products where we shop, such as Ulta, Sephora, and the other high-end retailers where we see other European beauty products. We belong there too. So let's get to it. Welcome, Sandra, to Latinas from the block to the boardroom. It is my absolute pleasure to have you on this podcast. You know, we're going to get into a lot of things about entrepreneurship, your journey, but most importantly, the brand that is you and Nopalera, and what it takes to really build that from the ground up as a business owner coming from the music industry, as a Chicana, and what that really means, bringing that into your product. So let's get into it. I'm just going to read real quickly the brand that you have on your website that really impacts the meaning, and I want to say your mission for Nopalera, and that is embody the bold. It is our birthright. A pride passed down from generation to generation, an energy that stands taller than the gods. Bold is in our blood. We are strong and resilient like the Nopal cactus, storied and spiritual like an everyday ritual, worthy of luxury, honor, and loyalty. Bold is beautiful. Bold is beyond beauty. It is the mark of Mexican identity, the key to our culture. Embody it. So let's talk about that heritage and the Chicana that is you. You were born in a border community. You talk about San Diego a lot, and there's a lot of Chicano history there. Chicano Park is there. That is a very emblematic place to a lot of Chicanos, the Chicano movement in particular. The arts and music is one of the biggest things to the Chicano movement, and it goes back decades. My family is a part of that, and so is yours. So let's talk about that and that identity to the Chicano movement, and how your music and growing up there really impacted you for this statement I just read.
Yeah, such a great question that most people don't ask me, because most people don't have a full understanding of Chicano culture and what that means. And I think that when you grow up in that, I thought everyone knew, kind of like I thought everyone knew what a nopal was. And only now that I've launched this brand, do I realize that so many people have no idea what a nopal is. So many people don't even know what Chicano means. They're like, why don't you just call yourself Latina? I'm like, because I'm Chicana. Like, I feel very much as a person who grew up biculturally near the border. And that is my lived experience. And that informs everything that I am and all the decisions that I have made, including starting the band Pistolera in New York, choosing to sing in Spanish and mixing, American rock with traditional Mexican music and bringing that into like a modern context, and now launching Nopalera is just who I am. And I guess I do think that because I left San Diego and because I moved to the other side of the country, I live in New York City now, I've been here for 24 years, that it actually brought it out even more because it's lacking around me. And so I wanted to recreate that for myself because I felt very out of place. And honestly, after 24 years, I still do. I really miss Chicano culture. I miss going to Logan. I miss Chicano Park. I miss, people speaking Spanish and English, like in the same place, like Mexican Spanish. It's just such a unique experience that I guess, I don't know, I feel very fortunate that I grew up in that and that was my reality. And I didn't realize that a lot of people didn't know what that was.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big history here in the United States that a lot of politicians and a lot of the education system really wanted to erase because they don't want us to stand, as you just mentioned, all those things on your website to embody the bold and be honored by the blood and the heritage that you have. I'm a third generation Latina here. And a lot of us that are multi-generational Mexican American, right? We've seen the struggle, and they are the ones that have championed the Chicano studies and the ethnic studies in schools, the Chicanas that write poetry and will not be silenced. And it continues today in the movement down in Tejas and also along the border areas there. And there's a lot of Latinas running for legislation this year, and I'm very excited to see, what happens out of this election year. I mean, for local regions, because those are the ones that really impact the main political agenda above. So thank you for sharing that story. And it is very important. And we will have some information in the show notes about the Chicano movement and how important and impactful it is here, especially to California. There's a whole history there that is still going on. And there's a resurgence, I want to say, of that knowledge and to bring it back into the forefront of a lot of multi-generational Latinos here. But I want to talk about how the nopal is really symbolic to the Mexican American culture and how that really gave you, I want to say, the spark. So can you share about the nopal itself? Because my grandma made huevos con nopales with tortillas.
Yeah, again, it's like I grew up with nopales like everyone else did, I thought. Certainly in Southern California, everyone knows what a nopal is. And, it's so funny because I remember it was just like, 2 years ago, I was talking to my sister who was just a couple years younger than me. So we're both in our 40s. And I said, Elena, did you know that people call the nopal the prickly pear cactus? And she was like, what the hell is that? What's a prickly pear cactus? And because, again, we've never called it that. Only since starting Nopalera have I had to adjust and bridge the connection in people's minds. Like when you think of prickly pear cactus, you're talking about the nopal. It's one and the same. Nopal is just the Spanish word for prickly pear cactus. And in fact, we just filmed a whole cactus trailer that's going to go on our website because this year we're really committed to educating people about the nopal because, aloe vera got all the love. So the nopal is something that I grew up eating just like you. And I totally took it for granted. I mean, I didn't think it was anything special because it was like any other thing that was in my backyard or front yard or on the side of the freeway. It was just always there. It wasn't this like unique. It wasn't exotic. It wasn't niche. I didn't discover anything. And I tell that to people all the time. I'm like, I have not discovered a new ingredient. The nopal has been here since pre-recorded human history, like before the Aztecs. So this is not a new plant. It is not niche. If you don't know what it is, that's your problem. But I knew that building a brand around this culturally symbolic plant, as you stated, would immediately attract our base consumer because obviously I wanted to speak this to be for Latinas, but also have global appeal. But I needed to capture the Latina heart first because that's what was missing is that there was nothing on the shelf that was, showing our culture in an elevated way and reflecting back what we knew to be a beautiful culture, right? A beautiful and rich culture. Everything on the shelf was reflecting quote unquote affordable, down market, like more lowbrow or gift shop or kitschy, and I'm like, that's not the full story, people. So that's why, Nopalera was created to widen the breadth of offerings in the Latino assortment, whether it's beauty, whether it's food, whatever it is. No one questions whether a French bottle of wine should or should not be $5,000. People are like, oh, well, it's a French wine that's ancient, it's old, it's aged, whatever. And if it's Mexican, people are like, why is it so expensive?
100%. 100%.
I'm like, cut that shit out. We have to change that. We have to be the ones that control the narrative and change that perception that everything Mexican needs to be a $2 taco.
Right? Yeah. This is an education piece of, all the comunidad that's listening. And also, I know there's a lot of business folks that listen to this podcast. And this is the thing. We know a lot of the history. We know the advantages to the product. And when we elevate it to the status of our historical knowledge and also the cultivation, I mean, it's really kind of like a linear supply chain that we can own from the farm to the corporate boardroom. That's what I'm going to say. And how we develop that is really just taking everyone, kind of building an ecosystem of support. This is what I say also in the business community of how we elevate each other. We change that narrative because I know a lot of us, when we start businesses, it's not just about getting paid. It's also about distributing wealth. And if we're not making the monetary value to distribute the wealth back into the community so that everybody gets elevated, then that's a problem, especially with that narrative. And I want to touch upon that specifically about who controls that narrative in the media today. It is not us, but we are becoming, as they say, the new majority. So let's talk about that community power and how it dominates the influence of brands, right? So let's talk about the brands, like you just mentioned, French wine. There's a lot of beauty products out there that are European that have their own shops, Lush for one. There's Lush, there's La Occitan, right? Which is another one. And then also Ayurveda, which all of them have been purchased by big beauty brands, right? Those are just a couple. And then we have others that have stepped into the arena. It's a very big market. So what do you think, right? Like, is going to take a brand, because there are brands that invest in this community for long-term, consumer, and Nike is one of them. So those are cheap products. I know they're completely different, but seriously, the global market of brown and Black people, especially on a higher consumer level, is bigger than the European market. So let's talk about that.
No, I love that. I love that you brought up Nike, because I use that Nike as an archetype all the time, because Nike does not sell shoes. Nike sells excellence. And Nopalera does not sell soap. Nopalera sells self-worth. And so it's very important to understand what you're really selling. We have to make and sell products to drive our economic engine and make money to reach our mission, right? To ultimately change the narrative about the value of Latino goods and therefore the value of us, this country. But it's not about the product. Nopalera is not SKU. Nopalera is a brand that has core values, that has community, that has a mission. And so that's the responsibility of a founder, to have that bigger vision and understand that it's not about any one given product, And I think also what I, tell people is Latinos now we have a lot of cultural capital. You see fastest growing cohort in the United States, Latinas over index in beauty. But who's headlining Coachella? Who's headlining the Billboard charts? What's the number one beer? It's Modelo. So we have a lot of cultural capital, right? People love our food. They love our music. Everyone knows the lyrics to Bad Bunny. You don't have to be Latino to enjoy Bad Bunny, right? And so it's that awareness. And that's, I'm in the process of fundraising right now. So this is like a fiery topic for me, because I have to constantly explain, like, look around what's happening in society. Look around what's happening in culture. That is the indication of the future, not what you see in your own house, in your own zip code bubble, but look out on the street and what's happening. And the other example that I like to use is hip hop, because hip hop is not that old, right? It's from the 70s. It was born in the Bronx, in New York City. And look at it now. It is a worldwide phenomenon. You cannot even imagine a world without hip hop, right? And this is not about like rap. I'm talking about hip hop has changed the musical landscape. People in Japan are rapping. People in Argentina are rapping. Like, this is a global phenomenon. And why? Because people want to be a part of something cool. They want to be a part of something cool. And culture is what that is, right? Again, it's not about a bar of soap. It's not about a shoe. And in fact, I was having this interesting conversation with an investor that I was pitching to the other day, where he was saying that he offered, as like they did a test, like they offered a person either a pair of Nikes or a pair of Filas, and everyone chose the Nikes without even seeing the shoes, right? In other words, like, both of them are shoes. They're going to cover your feet and you could walk in them, just like every car has 4 wheels and a steering wheel. Why do you pick the car that you pick, right? Why do you make the decisions that you make? It's because things have meaning, and they feed back into how you feel about yourself and how you want others to feel about you as well. And so, I can go on, but I think that is the power of culture that is like beyond category and product and SKU.
You're spot on. And I think that is where the brands need to understand that this is going to be a bigger kind of luxury lifestyle that is building now into the future. So the investment today is going to pay in the future. And that's the thing too. It doesn't happen overnight, right? And when we talk about these brands that are investing in communities, right, quote unquote, let's look at that, right? Sports is a very big one. Beauty is one of them. How they're not investing in the beauty market enough is really beyond my understanding of the CPG market. It is a huge multi-billion-dollar industry. And when you do the math of Latinas in the United States, that's not even globally, how much they spend per shopping basket in Sephora or Ulta or even online, or even going to spas, okay? Because spas are a very big thing now about self-care. These are things that we are spending money on. And I just want to say, it is because we are working more in higher paid jobs. We're also spending more on ourselves. We're not 100% there in pay equity, but the fact that we're higher education, spending more money on bath and luxury products, which is starting to show, people really need to tune into that. And so, you better get in now, because that's where the payoff is going to be.
Yeah. And you know what? It's not just the people investing, Teresa, it's also the retailers that need to catch up, because that is where we are at right now. The biggest roadblock is that the retail buyers that we have to pitch to, they don't even know how to say Nopalera. And they don't know what a nopal is. They don't understand it's the same thing as a prickly pear cactus, or they don't know people like us. And so they think that this is like a niche brand, a niche community. And that's also, we talk about Latinas in leadership and how we need to be in all positions of power. We need to be in the legal space. We need to be in the boardrooms. We need to be in the C-suite, but we also need to be in decision-making roles at retail, because that is the thing that's honestly where we're a little bit stuck right now, is having to like over defend the opportunity and the market opportunity in this community. And in that, I'll just say that it's really up to the community to speak up and demand.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's a product not on the shelf that you want, you have to ask your retailer to put that in there. And then they go and do the research. So get out there, go to Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, all the big stores, because you shop there, you like to, get your products at very high-end stores when you want to splurge on yourself. So this is a very good opportunity to step into that ask for the community. So one of the things I want to talk about, because you bring up a really good part about leadership, and there is I think it's less than 2% of Latinas in leadership roles, right? So if we go across multiple industries, it's less, probably way less. We're not anywhere in double digits. Why is that? We got to promote each other. This is what we're doing, building community. One of the things that I like is ownership equals representation. Yes, you made the product, but that's just beyond creativity and just saying, I want to make soap, right? There's a whole process to that. So let's talk about that. Like, you had to educate yourself, right? Let's talk about that education business process.
Yeah, well, I first will say that Nopalera, and I always say this, that Nopalera was born out of a place of discomfort, because if you're comfortable in your life, you're not going to take chances. If you're like, oh, I don't hate my job, but I don't love it, but I get a paycheck every Friday, it's fine, my bills are paid, you're never going to go out of your comfort zone unless something happens to propel you. So in my case, I was unemployed. So I was like, it's either I'm going to keep doing the same thing I have been doing, which got me here, which is not where I want to be, or I'm going to finally step up and build something bigger, and that's how Nopalera was born. It wasn't because I was lying around with extra money and wanted to do something cute or get crafty. It was because the jobs that I had had up to that point were never going to pay me enough to save, send my daughter to college. I had literally been living paycheck to paycheck my whole adult life, and I was in my 40s. And I had student loan debt. So for me, taking on more debt, like putting things on my American Express card, I was like, well, what do I have to lose? I have literally nothing to lose because I have literally nothing to lose. I'm like, come take my assets. I have none, So I enrolled in formulation school, studied for a year in stealth mode while I was working other jobs, worked on the branding concurrently, and really set out to build like a big Latina brand that would compete and be just as beautiful and efficacious and, as the other products that were on the market in the clean beauty space. And so when I launched, it was like a magnet, like people started coming right away and everything happened very quickly. And it was great, but also very overwhelming because I wasn't set up, talking to your point about the back end, the operations, what do you need to run a business? I was not set up to scale at all. I was making things in my house. My boyfriend was shipping the products. We were using some random app for inventory management. I just laugh when I think back to those days, which was not that long ago. That was 2021, And so I launched the way that I did because it was the only way that I could. I'm not a beauty industry insider, so I didn't have connections to co-packers, to ingredient suppliers, to anything. And so I started going to trade shows to try to meet people, to find anything, because I was like, how do I break into this industry? And from there, I just followed that strategy. So I applied to every grant, every pitch competition, every accelerator, and I got most of them, right? And I won 5 grants, and I have been in 6 accelerators. I just graduated from my 6th and hopefully last accelerator. And that is how I built my network, because I had no network when I started. And, beauty is a small industry, honestly. It's big, but there's a lot of, market opportunity, but the players everyone knows who they are, right? And the people that invest in beauty it's a small group that everyone knows each other. So it put a lot of effort into building that network while I was building the business, and then had to figure things out as they were happening, which is normal, but still stressful.
Right. So you had to go get the business license, right? I'm talking the footwork. That is not the fun part, right? That you have to educate yourself around, and all that operational stuff, which is extremely important to set up systems. But not only that, it's you have to put in the paperwork, right, for your assets, right? So your trademark, especially with Nopalera, is super important. No one else can take that name or the logo. That takes time and money.
And just so they're trying. That was one of the first things I did, to your point about what are the things that you have to do to set up a business. Literally, it was I had the idea. I went to my laptop. I registered the name at the USPTO, and I bought the URL. Did that immediately, because I was even if I decide not to do it, this needs to get done. So even now, what happens is the more visibility you get, it's the higher the level, the bigger the devil. I have been sued twice. And this last one, both of them are ridiculous. They're totally baseless claims. But because people have seen me on Shark Tank, they see me on television, so they think we're big and rich and famous, and they're trying to just get money, or they're mad that you're more famous than they are, and they've been around for 20 years.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not your fault that you set the right parameters. So that's the thing, people. It's when you're going down this path and you're really I'm all in, you have to file for those names, the domains, and the trademarks, because that protects, as I say, protect your assets in a funny way, but you're CYAing yourself. And the other thing is, when you start to submit those papers for the lawyers and also grants, right? To get the grants, how you set up your business, your books, all of this takes technology and that infrastructure. So I want to talk about that because, I was in tech for a long time. I worked for some big enterprise supply chain companies, early days. there are big inventory software. Not only that, but there is customer service, customer relationship management software. All of these things that are, say, from the front of your website all the way back to shipping it out the door, how that process gets done all takes technology. And also to investors and VCs, right? So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I don't think a lot of people understand that piece of the business.
Yeah. So I can also tell you things I did wrong so that can be helpful. So things you must have, like that are just non-negotiables. We already talked about trademarks, right? We talked about that. You need to have an accounting system, and that it cannot be an Excel sheet. It can't be a piece of paper. It can't be a notebook. QuickBooks is fine. There's other options, but QuickBooks is good for even companies that are doing over 20 million. You have to have someone that knows an expert in cash flow management. Who's going to create the financial model? And, ideally should be someone that understands your business type. Are you omnichannel? Are you e-com? Are you B2B only? Whatever. And so you have to have a financial model. That's also a non-negotiable. Otherwise, you don't know how to plan what the future looks like, where you came from. Like, you need to be able to track your progress. And so one of the mistakes I made early on is that I was using an accounting platform called Bench. And it was super easy to use. And I was like, this is the best thing ever. And only like a year, after using it for a year, when I went to apply for a loan, they were like, we need your financials in GAAP format. And I was like, oh yeah, sure, let me get that. And then I gave it to them. They're like, no, that you have, yours are in like cash form, like cash, you need it in like accrual format. And I was like, oh, I realized that Bench did not do that type of accounting. So then I had to hire an accountant to go and redo all my books for a year. Now you're spending more money. And so that was something I did wrong. Now everything's fine. Now I have a good accounting team in place. I have a VP of finance who runs the model. And so those are things that need to happen. Inventory, as you said, our whole business revolves around inventory. If we don't have inventory, we can't make money. We don't have a business. So inventory management, the big companies use NetSuite. You don't need to use NetSuite when you're a company my size. And so SAP is another one. Those are like a big company. I know people that use SAP. We use one called SOS. Honestly, it's super affordable. It can scale. It's pretty simple, honestly. And it connects to, Shopify, right? And it connects to, so there's the inventory management system, and then there's the actual warehouse, the actual location with the people in it that are picking and packing your orders. That's a whole other thing. That was, again, something that I learned the hard way. You don't know how much that costs until you're doing it. And you know what I mean? If you've never done it, then you're not going to know what percentage of sales should your freight and fulfillment be. And having an understanding of that and how to bring that cost down, where are the opportunities to improve that so that you're not giving away margin at freight and fulfillment. And also, we had to move our fulfillment warehouse over to a place in the middle of the country, because it used to be here on Long Island in New York, which is like zone 7 shipping for everyone else. And so it was really expensive, and we were just bleeding money on shipping. And so now it's in the middle of the country. It can ship to, all sides of the country a little more easily, and that's better. But fulfillment and shipping, people don't realize that when you work in the consumer space, I don't think customers know this and they might not care. It actually costs us brands more to ship the product to you than it does to make the product. So those are things that you absolutely need, right? You need to have, you talk about CRMs. You can have a CRM, like someone just has to be managing, the inbound, the reorder history, et cetera, and managing those relationships. Ultimately, software is a tool. You need a person to manage relationships. Software will not manage relationships for you. And so we now use Notion now as like our hub for like all the departments, because then there's a lot of transparency. Every department has their own space. And then there's like a central page where all the kind of quick links are, so that no one has to ask me like, where's the certificate of insurance? So, you have to find what works for you. Some people, I used to use ClickUp, and then we transferred over to Notion. I like it a lot better. Whatever works for you, but there has to be a central hub that is a source of truth, that is like where everyone looks for things. And then, the boring stuff, to your point, and I talked about this in my own podcast, writing the SOPs. It's like literally, I'd rather do anything else in life than write an SOP. I find it like the most excruciating. Like, it just makes my neck tense thinking about writing an SOP, but someone has to do it. It has to get done, because every time you bring on a new person or, someone leaves, you can't just start all over and explain yourself on how to process Amazon orders. You would just give them the one sheet.
Totally. 100%. And so for those of you that don't know, an SOP is a standard operating procedure document, and it's something that you do to onboard new employees. So first of all, a lot of the hiring has to come from people's skill sets, right? And sometimes you want to hire your tias and your tios, but when you get to this level, like we all do, we want to hire a family, and that's good. That could even make economic sense for you. But if they don't know the systems, which I say everybody can learn the system. If you know how to be posting on social media 5 times a day about your tios and your primos and all their bullshit, you can run some of these systems. I'm not kidding. It's really just getting in there. The systems we're talking about to stand up a business, this is really important. It's about tracking. It's about data. It's about forecasting revenue. And some of the systems that you mentioned, actually, I do use myself. And we can have, some information on the show notes. I actually use Slack as our kind of team communication hub. So there's many things, but everybody does have to be on the same page to understand, where's this product going? How much do we have in inventory? Everybody needs to be on the same page. So I want to talk a little bit about that grit, right? That you do to get into these accelerators and what it means for leadership, because you have the ganas, I think, to stand in front of those VCs from your music, performance days. And by learning what the challenges are. So let's talk about the leadership, aspect of a business, because you're also a mom, right? So let's bring in the leadership aspect of your business, learning all that, and then also having to work with teams, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that this last accelerator that I was in, the Morgan Stanley Accelerator, was the best in terms of really honing my leadership skills and being able to really step into really being the CEO, like having a CEO mindset. And that's incredibly valuable because we're running a people business. And so you do need to know how to build company culture. You do need to know how to keep the team on the same page, how to keep them motivated, how to pull them into the brand so that people don't just feel like they're just doing like a to-do list, right? And I feel very fortunate because I have a very small but committed team. They've all been my ops person is only a year old, but everyone else has been with me since the beginning. They started as contractors and now I made them full-time employees, and everyone is super imbued in the brand values and what we stand for and the mission. And so they can speak to it. And that's really important. And because we're a remote team, we have to build culture, in creative ways. So we do quarterly get-togethers. We'll either bring the West Coast people here to New York, or we'll all go to the West Coast. And that's really important to keep, again, people the team unified, especially if you're a remote team like we are. And so people ask me this a lot, how do you know who to hire? How do you know that you can trust them? And honestly, for me, having a good resume is just one half of the equation. Lots of people have good resumes. I want to know what the content of your character is. I want to know, do you have a moral compass? I want to know, what you're really passionate about. What is it that is driving you, is kind of what I want to know. And the answer could be I just enjoy solving problems. I enjoy job that is for something that stands for something. It doesn't have to be the same passion that you as a founder have. But going back to your point about, waking up in the middle of the night panicking, did you send that email? It is important for the founder to have a very strong why, because this is so hard that it cannot just be that you like to make products. If you just like to make products and that's why you want to start a business, don't start a business. Just make products. Just enjoy, you know what I mean? Sell them to your family and friends or whatever. But running a business, where you have corporate documents, where you're raising capital, where you have human resources, you have payroll taxes, you have all these things that are, again, not the fun things that people think about when they're starting a beauty brand. The why has to be so powerful because that's the only thing that's going to pull you through, and what burns inside of me is ultimately, if you ask me why 5 times, it comes down to what I really care about is equality. Do I care about wrinkles on your face? No, I actually don't. There's plenty of soap in the world. There's plenty of lotion in the world. But I'm creating a brand that stands for something, that's speaking to a customer that hasn't been spoken to in this way. And ultimately, what I want is for the narrative to change about the perception, of when they think Latino, they don't think cheap. And also for Latinos themselves to not think of themselves as cheap and to also stand in their power and to be proud of who they are and not feel like they have to assimilate or dumb it down or hide anything about who they are. And so that's what drives me, and that is I'm an activist in that way, because really it's coming from a place of social justice. And I come from a social justice family. My mother is a human rights activist. My father is also deeply, cares about justice. He used to be a homicide detective, and my mother's an immigration lawyer. So I grew up in this like fist in the air household, and that's definitely who I am. I've just shown it in a different way. I didn't go into law. I didn't go into like on the street advocacy necessarily, but I did it through the arts, right? I did it through music, and now I'm doing it through this brand. And so you have to have that fire inside.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a complete serious mic drop right there. And I love that because at the end of the day, that's what gives you your fuel, even when you're struggling. And that's the next step for you, Sandra, is when all this is said and done, all this experience, all the trials and tribulations, as they say, the learning journey, and then the successes that you take, that is what puts people in boardrooms, because then they can also help other companies to bring that perspective. And that's why this podcast, Latinas from the Block to the Boardroom, is that we want to put more Latinas in ownership representation. We want to see more Latinas in the C-suite in corporations. And more than ever, we want to see them in boardrooms. And I think that's also your journey with all this whole network and your experience. And I think it's going to be extremely valuable. So gracias for joining me today, Sandra. And we will have your Chicana Nopal power in the show notes of where we can find all your information. Is there anything else you'd like to lead us out with tonight?
I mean, I just have a request for those who are listening that believe in what we're building here. We need you to demand Nopalera at retail. And I'm talking about Ulta. So if you can walk into your local Ulta, you call them, you email them, you tag them on Twitter, wherever it is, however it is, you need to let them know, because I get a lot of inbound, beautiful notes from strangers, from customers, from fans that, they continue to tell me how much the brand means to them, how inspiring I am. And I'm like, I appreciate that, but I don't need you to tell me that. I need you to tell Ulta them, because that's where we're at. And if we are all to succeed, we need a national retailer to let us in.
Awesome. Yep. So you heard it. That's the call to action, folks. And all the mujeres out there that want to give your primas and the baby showers and all that stuff, you go in there and demand that product, because it is a luxury gift and it is something nice to give to new moms, I would say, or for not just the holiday season, right? It's something to give all the time. And I love the product myself. I'm not just saying that. I do love it. So thank you, Sandra, for joining me today from Latinas from the Block to the Boardroom. Gracias, Sandra, for joining us today on Latinas from the Block to the Boardroom. If you would like to know more about Nopalera, you can visit their shopping website at Nopalera, that's NOPALER.co. And if you'd like to learn more about Sandra, you can visit her personal website at sandraliliavelazquez.com. If you'd like to learn more about latinasb2b.com, you can reach out to us at info, that's INFO, at latinasb2b.com. And if you'd like to shop for some merchandise for this podcast, such as hoodies, tote bags, tumblers, and water thermal bottles, you can go to latinasb2b.com/shop. Gracias.